Hello and welcome to the WISFB Football Wraparound report for Week 1. I'm Dan Barwick, joined by Dylan Dooley. You might know us from DG Sports' football radio calls down in the Racine area, streaming online, and also from other parts of the internet. I'm at Barwickopedia on X/Twitter, providing score updates for years and years, and I'm also DB from the old WIS Sports forums and currently Badger State sportsboards.net. The purpose of this show is simply to just talk about what happened with the first week of high school football and every week from here on out. Uh, just going over some interesting results and maybe some big performances and any other talking points. Um, Dylan, obviously we call games together and we have our game of the week that we call, and I think we'll talk about that one because that was a pretty big game. And I attend games Thursdays, Saturdays, whenever I can get to other games as well. And we'll talk about those as well. But yeah, I think let's dive into it here. I think why don't we just start off with the game that we did on Friday? It was Franklin at Racine Case, former Southeast Conference matchup, turned non-conference affair for this year. Uh, and yeah, Racine Case ended up pulling out a 20-10 win. I don't necessarily want to say it sent shockwaves, but I think it definitely raised a lot of eyebrows as far as results go from this week.
Yeah,
So, Dylan, yeah, you it was one of those things where it's like I predicted, if Case is going to get a win here in this game, it's going to be on the back of their defense. And boy, their defense showed out for sure.
yeah, the defensive case is going to be a machine this year. The few opportunities that Franklin did have, including two or three dropped passes, two were in the end zone. One was like a wide open 40-yard pass downfield. They didn't help them, obviously, in this case with just a 10-point loss. The case offense definitely struggled at times to get things going against Franklin. Some younger pieces on the O line looked very good in the running game, but the passing game definitely did struggle at times. Franklin, a lot of challenges ahead. Obviously, Southeast last year going into the Classic 8. Now this year, next week they play Wanakee here on Friday. It's week 1 to week 9 for them. There is no easy game, so we'll see how things sort of play out for them as the season continues.
Yeah, yeah, and then I think really a big part, obviously, there's a couple of drops. There's the one you mentioned from Gavin Sheik on fourth down, where he was right in the back of the end zone. I remember we kind of said maybe it was just one of those things where he was right near the end line and just kind of looked down and he lost the ball, and ended up being a big stop for Case. And it was one of many stops, as you said there. The defensive line really got after Keegan Best, and the secondary did a great job in coverage. I mean, Amari King was our player of the game, and for good reason. He was all over the field. And yeah, just a great win for Coach Graham and the Case Eagles as they continue to try and build that program. Um, I think from here, I think we'll start off with our neck of the woods, the greater Milwaukee area, and just Dylan, what did you see? What scores really kind of piqued your interest?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest standout performances is 7 passing touchdowns by junior Norberto Rosales of Kenosha Bradford in their 52-12 win over Badger. Uh, Obviously, Badger loses the key piece of their offense, defense, their kicker. But to come out and somebody put up 50 on them is a very impressive feat.
Yeah, I mentioned on our broadcast after I gave that final score, and I think my exact words were, "Badger just doesn't lose by 40." And obviously coming into this year, I think people knew there was some serious potential with Bradford, and particularly their passing game, and that definitely bore itself out. But I think their running game was also pretty successful. I think Gahari Barnes was averaged about 11 yards a carry, I believe was what I saw. So, I mean, if they're putting both of those together, they're going to be a dangerous team. And looking forward to conference play, that Case Bradford matchup seems like it's going to be for the conference. Kenosha Indian Trail might have something to say about that, but yeah, that's going to be a great game, when it comes to that Case defense against the Bradford offense for sure.
Yeah, and that'll be a game that we cover on DG Sports. You can follow us dgsports.mixler.com. We'll bring you that game live, subscription free coverage. Excited for that one. And yeah, what an impressive week one showing by Bradford.
Yeah, absolutely. So what else did you see out there?
Something that I thought was uh you know not necessarily shocking, but something that might not have happened for a while. But all three Waukesha schools start the season 1-0. Waukesha North squeezing one out over Milwaukee Lutheran. Waukesha South took down West Bend East with ease, and then Waukesha West taking the 17 to nothing win over Janesville Craig. So all three of those schools are 1-0 here to start the year.
Yeah, obviously the talking point with Waukesha West being that they're now in the North Shore, a different league, and playing a lot of different schools from what they're used to from their many years in the Classic Eight. I think they're a team that's going to fit in well in that league, going to be very competitive, and it'll be interesting to see where they end up. South, it's a 27-year playoff drought they're looking to end, and they've pinpointed this year this senior class as the ones to hope to be able to do it. They have one of the best, if not the best, receiver or quarterback combo in the state with quarterback Jordan Garcia and wide receiver Keegan DeGeorge, and he's not the only weapons that they have. For them, it's just a matter of finding a way to win the close games. As last year, I believe they lost something like four one-score games and just missed out on the playoffs. And then North is a bit of I think they're a bit of a work in progress. The score against Wagyu Lutheran is a lot closer than it was, from what I understand. I think Lutheran scored quite a bit late in that game to make it a little nervous for the North Stars. But yeah, it's absolutely a great start for the Waukesha Public Schools there.
And we'll continue right down the road in New Berlin. Reedsburg comes down and they take down New Berlin West 22 to 21. Uh, they do so without completing a pass. Obviously, that's nothing new for Reedsburg. They had a game last year against Waterford where they put up 500 yards of offense and didn't complete or attempt a pass in that game.
Yeah, and obviously they have the Beavers. They have a pretty big hole to fill with the graduation of Will McConowitz, and he's now with the Wisconsin Badgers. It's a preferred walk on. He was just a steamroller at running back last year. You mentioned that Waterford game. I think he had about 500 yards rushing in that one. But they have a lot of pieces back to kind of build again towards the end of the year. Um, for New Berlin West, it's yeah, there's another team that's kind of expecting to challenge. They might be the team to challenge Pewaukee in that conference. Um, I did see that one of their touchdowns came on a 99-yard kick return for a TD by Evan Trudell, who last year saw a lot of time as a freshman, and I was a sophomore, is going to be maybe their big bell cow on offense. So again, good result for Reedsburg. I think it was never a good loss, but I think it's a game where New Berlin West can definitely hold their heads high and take that performance and build on it moving forward.
Yeah, New Berlin West, the team that we've seen under Coach Chosick, kind of fly under the radar at times, but they're definitely a team that you can't sleep on. They have a lot of talent and a very well coached team.
No, absolutely. Yep. Very, very disciplined, hard nosed for sure.
And to kind of wrap out Southeast Wisconsin here, one of the other kind of standout games, Port Washington, they start off with a nice win over Sheboygan North. Their quarterback, Jack Bunyan, had five touchdowns and an interception, going 494 yards in the air. So, just a nice offensive showing there for Port Washington. Obviously, Sheboygan North not up to the standard that they probably want to be at this point. But Port Washington still being able to get a lot of points on the board and a very impressive showing through the air.
Yep, yep, for sure. The Pirates are going to be an interesting team to watch as well. That new Glacier Trails League is going to be kind of interesting because you got teams coming from few different places. But I think we're expecting Grafton, Port Washington, and Plymouth, I will mention here coming up shortly as teams to watch out for in that league. Obviously, we'd be remiss not to mention the defending state champions in Division One, Arrowhead, who pretty much cruised to a 35-7 win over Marquette. So it looks like they're picking up right where they left off. And the interesting thing about Week One is we'll end up kind of going in and out of the various areas of the state just because of how non-conference play is. So we'll mention some other Milwaukee area teams in different sections here. I think now we'll transition over towards the Madison Southwest area, and obviously, from the big school standpoint, um, this is a Fox Valley / Madison Southwest kind of game. But the one that really kind of jumped off the page was Bayport and Middleton. Bayport with a 56-15 win. There was some concern how they lost Matt Stevens, they lost Brady Moon at running back. What's their production going to be? Pirates averaged 10.6 yards on the ground. Ryder Timmerman was great, 8 carries, 135 yards and a touchdown. And their backup quarterback, Bray Babich, who's the son of a Packers assistant coach, he just went 4 for 4 for 186 yards and 2 TDs through the air. So, yeah, they're definitely just reloading up there in Bayport, and Middleton's going to have to find a way to bounce back from that. Staying in the Badger, Muskego, Wanakee visited Muskego and another marquee non-conference game, and Muskego took the win 24-7. Not a lot out there about the game. Muskego's stats were pretty fairly balanced. They did stuff through the air. They only averaged about 3.5 yards a carry as Wanakee kind of kept them bottled up. But that Muskego defense always seems to carry them early in the year and all throughout the year as the offense usually starts to find its way, gets feet under them. And I mean, yeah, they show up and you only put up 3.5 yards a carry and you still win by 17 against Wanakee. Yeah, I think you're on your way to have a good season for sure. Looking elsewhere, New Glarus, a team we saw last year in the playoffs as they came to Racine and knocked off Racine Lutheran in a game that we did. They've got some people they need to replace, but they played a very good Cambridge squad and came away with a 28-24 win. Carson Prekel, who we saw a bit as kind of a role player for the Glarner Knights last year, had 28 carries, 130 yards, and 3 TDs to offset what was a pretty good passing day for Cambridge. Ian Nellis threw for 293 yards, with Jakari Crawford catching 6 balls for 118 yards and 2 TDs, but it just quite wasn't enough as the Blue Jays fell to New Glarus. So Marshall beat Johnson Creek. I think our friend Joe Herty was at this game, and the score was 36-0, I believe, and it's kind of reversed from last year because Johnson Creek took care of the Cardinals, but Marshall this year took care of business and might be looking pretty good for a good season. I don't think Johnson Creek is going to be too bad, but it just might be a thing where, yeah, graduation losses, new guys coming in, just couldn't quite repeat what they did last year. And elsewhere on that front, a big game, kind of a rematch of a game we've seen a couple times over the past few years. Defending state champ Grafton. They rallied with 10 points in the fourth quarter, but it just wasn't quite enough as Mount Horeb Barneveld got the win 14-10 there. Grafton's workhorse running back, Jack Nelson, he had 130 yards on the ground, but it took him 30 carries to get it as Mount Horeb did a pretty good job of containing Grafton's usual explosive offense. Eli Meyer was leading rusher for Mount Horeb Barneveld in that one with 151 yards. He had a big game there. And another one more down in the southwest corner of the state, Potosi Cassville, who's a pretty big powerhouse, usually in D7. They're up in D6 this year as another tournament performance factor bump up. They're taking on a Cuba City team that's looking to get back to the playoffs. Cuba City was able to take a 27-20 win. Interestingly, the Cubans only had about 200 yards of offense, but 2 of their scores came on kickoff returns by Carter Rundy. Not sure how long they were because, unfortunately, there's not a lot of scoring summaries available. Bound doesn't have them, and finding stuff in papers these days gets harder. But he averaged 83.5 yards on them, so they must have been pretty long ones. So that's a good win for the Cubans, who are looking to get back, like I said, to the playoffs after last year. They kind of had to rebuild a bit after losing a huge senior class. And then a game that I attended yesterday, it was the dedication of the new football field, football facility at St. Mary's Springs. The defending D6 champs from Darlington came up, and this has been a matchup we've seen in the playoffs many times over the years, and we're getting it in week one here. And unsurprisingly, the Darlington Redbirds, who are pretty loaded again this year, they didn't graduate a whole lot from the team that kind of steamrolled their way to a state championship. Took care of business against Springs 35-0. Darlington's front seven on defense was just dominant. Springs only had about 90 yards of total offense in the game, and probably about half of that came later on as Darlington had made some subs on defense. Springs was all right defensively. They only gave up 3 touchdowns. Two of Darlington's scores were defensive scores. Springs did pretty well controlling Darlington's run game till the very end, where the Darlington got a long touchdown from Dante Glendenning on a 4th and short, where Springs kind of sold out to stop him. But they just, yeah, I mean, Darlington they consistently move the ball. It wasn't big plays, but it was 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 yards every play, and just keep grinding the clock and grind you down. And that's kind of what they did to Springs. He said, I don't think Darlington's going to have much of a challenge during the regular season. I mean, they play in a pretty strong league, but this team is pretty good. Springs in the flyway is going to be interesting to see. I think they'll be all right. They're going to have to find something offensively, though, because I don't think it was just because Darlington is that good. I just think that they're maybe lacking in star power on that side of the ball. Any thoughts there as we close out the Madison Southwest kind of overlook?
Yeah, we talked. You had mentioned the Mount Horeb Barneveld grafting game. That was a game where Mount Horeb Barneveld was up 14-0 coming into the fourth quarter. They give up 10 unanswered. Grafton almost was able to squeeze that one out. That was a game last year that Grafton, on their way to the state championship over Reedsburg, they took that one 24-7 last year. So a bit of you know get back, if you will, by Mount Horeb Barneveld to get that one, and a big win for them as they come into the season here.
Yeah, and both teams obviously have a lot of new faces for sure. I think Grafton will be fine at the end of the day. It's just one of those things where you come in and a bunch of kids are getting their first real starting experience in a big game, and they just fell a little bit short. So yeah, anyway, moving on to the Fox Valley, I think one of the big matchups there was Freedom and Lake Mills, who are two of the more highly ranked teams in Division 4. And Freedom won this one 40-0. Uh, they had a big day. Quarterback Owen Henkel threw for 196 yards on 16 completions, and junior running back Axel Eggert had 163 on the ground for 3 TDs. Didn't see anything stats wise reported for Lake Mills. I mean, I obviously know they have 4-year starter Tyler Wolin at quarterback, but Freedom must have found a way to shut down that offense because 0 points is 0 points, no matter how you slice it.
And that Lake Mills team, as you mentioned, their their play has been pretty good over the last couple of years, including an 8-3 record last year. So, uh, very surprising result here in week one.
Right. And obviously the big game, the big news, the one that caught everyone's attention on Friday night was Notre Dame and Nina, which Notre Dame took 56-53 in overtime. Uh, Obviously Kingston Allen, everyone knows him, starting his year off very well with 458 yards rushing and 7 touchdowns. I don't think it's crazy to say that a 4,000-yard rushing season is out of reach for him. I mean, especially if he's going to do 300, 400 yards every week. I mean, everyone always jokes about the Derrick Henry high school rushing yard, his career stats. Kingston Allen over these last 2 years is approaching that kind of territory, at least has the potential again to approach that territory again this year. In the loss, Nina quarterback Ashton Van Beek also accounted for 7 TDs. He ran for 260 yards and 5 touchdowns and threw for 166 more and 2 scores through the air. Um, Fortunately, in overtime, Nina got held to a field goal, and then when Notre Dame got the ball, they ended up scoring the game-winning touchdown on a play where it was, I don't know, it was kind of like I think Travis Wilson called it a bit of a Statue of Liberty play, like a Philly special kind of thing. where they kind of got everyone thinking Allen was going to get the ball and then came back out and threw it the other way. And Joey Massey was wide open and he trucked his way in from 25 yards to win that one. Both those teams, obviously, Notre Dame will be there, and Nina obviously will be there as well at the end of the year. And speaking of Nina and the Fox Valley, two of the bigger games took place on Thursday, where for the second year in a row, Appleton North found a way to stifle the McGuanago offense and take a win over the Indians. It was 10-7 to the Lightning. What stuck out to me looking at this one, though, is McGuanago did not have senior running back Jarrell Anderson. He was not in the box score, and McGuanago averaged 1.9 yards per carry, which is very tough to win when that's what the production you're putting up. And just the other game that was a big one was Sussex Hamilton got another win, their third in the last 365 or so days over Kimberly, 27-12. Kimberly got it to like 14-12, I think, kind of in the middle portion of the game, but then Sussex was able to use their very balanced attack on offense to, end up winning by two scores and didn't really feel like from the vibe I was getting following along on Thursday that Kimberly was really had a chance to do something there, particularly in the second half. And then I
There's
had mentioned, oh, let's go ahead.
I was gonna say it was a very impressive performance by Sussex Hamilton. Kimberly was trying to throw many different things at them, and they were just able to shut down all the different types of attacks that Kimberly was, you know, playing throughout the game. So
Yep. Yeah, that
impressive.
Sussex team, they're scary. It's just a matter now of when they get to those big games in the playoffs, just finding a way to get those wins when you're playing the Arrowheads of the world and whoever.
And you had mentioned the Appleton North game. That was a Hail Mary at the end of the game too that went through three defenders' hands and ended up falling to the ground. To obviously go in Appleton North's favor there in that one.
Mm-hmm. And I'd mentioned we talked about the Glacier Trails. Plymouth was going to be one of the teams that we expect to fight with Grafton and Port Washington for the conference crown. They had a quite the shootout here with Menasha. I'm seeing a 42-41 score final for Plymouth. I don't have many deets on that game. Obviously, we know Menasha's situation with the tornado, how it's affected the community. It obviously did some damage to their football stadium, so they'll be playing their games at the Banta Bowl for Lawrence University's field in Appleton. And unfortunately, I also heard that Menasha's quarterback might have suffered a fairly serious injury late in the game. I haven't heard any updates on that. But yeah, it's a good win for Plymouth. I think both of those teams are going to be very good and teams to watch for as we go on later in the season. Another one that I was kind of paying attention to was Winneconne. Obviously, they won state in Division Four last year. After replaced a lot, including Brody Schaefer, who was kind of really their do everything guy. They played Wrightstown. They got a 21-20 win, and sophomore quarterback Henry Chase, who has some very big shoes to fill at that position, had a nice game for his debut. He was 11 of 16, 150 yards. Had found three TDs through the air and had one interception. So Winneconne, and I know they had some pretty strong lower levels last year. So as they look to kind of backfill all those graduation losses from a state championship team. And then one thing I keep track of, I have for years, I did it on the WIS Sports message boards, and I continue it now on Badger State Sports, is streaks, winning streaks, losing streaks, conference winning, conference losing. And in the Fox Valley, we had a fairly big one, although it's technicality, it's only like 13 games, but on field, it's 27 games. Green Bay Southwest won their first game on the field since a 10th game in October of 2023 against Green Bay East. Uh, on Friday, they knocked off Sheboygan South 33-13. So congrats to the boys up at Southwest for getting that streak off their back, because we both of our alma maters have gone through their long losing streaks or are still on one in the conference losing streak case of my whack Bulldogs. But it's always nice when in the relief, just the palpable relief within the community and everyone around the program when you get that win. So yeah, next I'll move on to the North Central here, and the big thing that we were going to talk about, or the big thing that was really going on, was obviously the non-conference matchups between the Wisconsin Valley and the Big Rivers. Um, Chippewa Falls 50, DC Everest 22. I know a lot of people in that area are high on the Cardinals and Chippewa Falls. DC Everest still should be in the mix in the Valley, but that's a good win for the Cardinals. Wausau West beat Menominee 36-21. I don't know that a lot of people were expecting that. And obviously, Menominee is the team that's been in the playoffs for a long, long time. I forget what their streak is. It might be in jeopardy this year, though, if Wausau West is taking care of them like that. Hudson, who's probably another one of the big favorites in the BRC, demolished Wisconsin Rapids. No surprise there. 52-7 was the score on that one. Stevens Point got a big win over River Falls. River Falls retooling a little bit after a wonderful season that last year. Trent Breitbach is the quarterback for the Panthers in Stevens Point there. He's a guy who tested really well at like the WFCA combine and stuff this year. He's a tremendous athlete. I mean, he put up great numbers in this game. Completed 12 passes, 17 attempts, 299 yards, 4 TDs. And then he just ran for 148 on 18 carries and a touchdown as well. His top target was Isaac Yang, who pulled in 7 passes for 191 yards and added 2 TDs there. One that probably opened a lot of people's eyes the most, though, was Marshfield taking down Rice Lake 44-6. I mean, Rice Lake is a team that it feels like is there all the time. D3 usually. They've been in D2 because of tournament performance factor recently. But they're a team that just kind of reloads with their flex bone offense. And Marshfield held them to 3.9 yards per carry. Didn't have any information on Marshfield, and I didn't see any stats for them. But that's a great win for the Tigers. Obviously, a program, very proud program with a good history. It's kind of been in the doldrums a bit lately, but great win for them there. Stratford, who was the first team, I think, ever to be bumped up 2 divisions in football. They're a D6 enrollment, but they're now in Division 4. They always open up. They always schedule tough. They usually play Mosinee. They played Mosinee again this year. That's a team that's got a new coach, has to deal with a lot of graduation losses. And Stratford took it to them 31-0. Another one, Tomahawk had a great year last year. They made the playoffs, made a nice little run there, and expecting again, I think, this year to have a good year. They played Luther out of Onalaska over there in the Cooley, and Luther took it to them 27-6. Held the Hatchets to just 3.2 a carry. Logan Pierce had 3 touchdowns on the ground for Luther. One thing I did notice, and it might be a bit of a concern or something for the Hatchets going forward, is last year they had 2 different sophomores who kind of split time at quarterback. Carried the ball a lot, stuff like that. And neither of them are on the roster this year. So I don't know what's going on with that. In a Great Northern Mississippi Valley matchup, we see this one a lot too. Medford and Holman, they play each other pretty regularly. Medford gave them a battle. Holman came out on top 21-14. So it's going to be a good win for them. I expect Medford to do some good things in the Great Northern this year. Going down the smaller school level there, Marathon took a nice 24-16 win over Loyal Greenwood. Sophomore quarterback Brayson Schneider had 3 touchdowns and 236 yards passing. Yeah, he's got a stud receiver by the name of Garrett Bracewell. He's a 6'2", 170-pound senior. He had 12 catches for 193 yards and 2 of those touchdowns. And then finally, we'll move over to the Northwest Lacrosse area on Thursday. Columbus and Osceola met. They actually played this game at Arcadia High School. A little neutral site game. Obviously, Columbus has been very good over the past 5 years. Osceola comes out of the middle border, and Osceola got a 35-20 victory, which tells me that they are raring to go and look at coming out into conference play in that tough middle border and having something to say about who wins the league. It's been a while for the Chieftains. They've had some tough years, but it looks like they're coming back around. Last year's 8-player champs, McDonald Central, have returned to 11-player football, and they got a rude awakening or a rude welcome in their return to 11-player, as it were, playing old rival Regis, who knocked off the Max 59-12. West Salem and Onalaska, that's a matchup we see a lot. West Salem got a 28-0 win. And according to the folks at the Lacrosse Tribune, this is the first time Onalaska has been shut out in 13 years. The last time was a 36-0 loss to Mosinee in September of 2013. Aquinas and Prairie du Chien, again, another non-conference matchup we see pretty regularly. Uh, Owen Ludlow's a new quarterback for Aquinas. He was 9 of 15 for 185 yards and 3 touchdowns. And PDC, Prairie du Chien there, they struggled only competing 25% of their passes and they averaged less than 3 yards a carry as the Blue Golds were able to take that 24-13 win. And then again on the streaks front, something that piques my interest here. This is kind of a big one. Is Superior beat Eau Claire North 58-28. That snapped a 29-game losing streak in pretty emphatic fashion. The last time they won was September 30th, 2022, when they beat Eau Claire Memorial. We had another 7-touchdown performance in this one as Maxton Luzak had 30 carries for 304 yards for those 7 touchdowns. And over on defense, Luke Lundgren and Thomas Anderson racked up 10 tackles apiece. And in other streak action, Colfax and Augusta, something had to give here because both of them are on the list. And it was Colfax ending their 26-game losing streak. First win since August of 2023 when they beat Whitehall. So congrats to the Vikings for getting that off their back. And then the only thing left to cover here is 8-player football. Obviously, there's some very tragic and sad news that came out of the 8-player game this week. Alma Center Lincoln defeated Turtle Lake 42-18 on Thursday, but Alma Center Lincoln's quarterback Adam Massman suffered a head injury in that game, was given assistance on the field, and eventually taken away to another facility where later on in the weekend he unfortunately passed away due to a traumatic brain injury, essentially. It's obviously very tragic. Our thoughts are with the Massman family, everyone in the Alma Center community, and the kids at Turtle Lake too. That's just a really tough situation to be in. It's a rough game. There's risk involved, and you always hope that these things don't happen, but it's unfortunate. So yeah, again, our thoughts are with the community there, and just yeah, it's yeah. I don't know what to say other than that. Unfortunately,
Yeah, very tough situation. Again, our thoughts and prayers out to all those involved. Uh, Obviously, football is a collision sport. Those type of injuries, albeit rare, they do happen. So again, just
yeah,
prayers
and
and thoughts out to everybody that has to now navigate the storm with that.
right. And I said, like you said, it thankfully it doesn't happen often. The last one I recall in the state of Wisconsin, anyway, was Pat Geelan of Lomira back in I think it was 2003 because I was still in high school at the time, and he suffered an injury to his neck and it like did something to one of his arteries and he ended up having a fatal stroke. But yeah, obviously horrible situation and just strength to everyone that's involved there. Moving on to other 8-player action, one of the more interesting storylines has been Iola Scandinavia canceling their 11-game season and opting to play 8-player football. And they obviously, the big story there is they have a player in the name of Kors Loken. He's a big tight end. I'm a guy who's committed to Wisconsin. So people are kind of interested as to what a Division I recruit can do in 8-player football. And the Iowa Scandinavia took on Marion Tiger Teams, expected to be a very solid team in 8-player. And Iowa Scandinavia took a 34-8 win. Loken had 2 catches, 80 yards, a touchdown, a 2-point conversion, an interception, a strip fumble, a recovery, 4.5 tackles, and a sack. So he was unsurprisingly all over the field for the Thunderbirds. And then, kind of a thing that we're looking at is some of these teams that are dropping from 11-man into 8-player. Turtle Lake was one of those. as they mentioned earlier, they lost their game. But Clear Lake in their first A-player game beat Flambeau 35-16. Flambeau's replacing a lot. One of the guys they do it back, Miles Liebert, had a nice game, 138 yards, rushing in 2 TDs. Didn't have any info on Clear Lake, but yeah, it's a good win for them as they stake their claim in A-player. And then two of the power programs in the northeastern part of the state squared off. Wabeno Leona defeated Lena St. Thomas Aquinas 12-6. Um, the Rebels, as the co-op sporting teams of Wabeno Leona are called, which is kind of a shame because Wabeno's the Law Growlers and Leona's the Fighting Kellys, two of the better names, but they're the Rebels in their combined athletic endeavors. We're led by senior Cooper Albrecht, who had 194 yards of offense with a passing and rushing TD to account for both of Wabeno Leona's scores. And yeah, I just added 18 tackles on defense as well. Yeah, A-player as it usually is. There was a lot of blowouts. Top ranked Gilman went up to Phillips and 157-0. I think Belmont went down to, was it DeSoto, I believe, and won 48-0. And Owen Withy also got a big win over Prairie Farm Clayton. So all the big hitters, as you would expect, won big early on in the 8-player game. And yeah, I think that does it for our wrap up. Obviously, this is a bit of a work in progress here. We're trying to figure out the best way of recording and all that, and trying to put this together just so people got something to listen to kind of hear what happened in their neck of the woods and elsewhere. And yeah, so any final thoughts there, Dylan?
Just opening night is or opening weekend now with so many teams playing Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Whether it's due to lack of referees, field shortages, it's just what a great weekend of football all around. Very excited to continue on as we go through the season here. There's some big matchups, obviously, week after week across the state. And very excited to bring coverage on that, learn some more about teams maybe in the north and western part of the state that you're way more familiar with than I am. Obviously, I follow the southeast corner of the state pretty heavily and am familiar with outside, but obviously not to the degree and scale that you are. So, very excited to continue our conversations all season long and, just hope to bring some more coverage and look as we progress through the season on high school football here in Wisconsin.
Yeah, absolutely. And like anyone watching or anyone out there, wants to come on, chime in, help out, whatever. Send us some info during the week on the game you were at. Maybe someone had a big performance or there's something going on storyline wise that we could perhaps talk about. Let us know. But yeah, we'll obviously continue doing this, and maybe we'll have some guests on at some point. I don't know. We'll see how this goes. It's kind of a whim I had, leading up to the start of the season, and we're going to give it a shot here. So, yeah, obviously it's me and Dylan. We do, like I said, we're DG Sports. We do the football calls this week. We're down in Union Grove as Whitefish Bay visits and what should be a big game. So, you don't have anything going on, you're sitting around the house or wherever, out for a walk, doing whatever on Friday, just tune into us and Dylan will give you that link here and let you know where to look for us.
Hey, you can go to the app or Google Play Store and look us up, Mixler app, Mixlr, and then just type in DG Sports, it'll pop up, or you can head to dgsports.mixler.com. You don't have to sign in, you don't have to create an account. Just listening does us a tremendous favor on its own.
Yep. And yeah, it's going to be pretty much it for us. Obviously, I mentioned earlier, you can still find me if you knew me from the Wisconsin Sports Network forum, all that stuff. That community is still active. We're at badgerstatesports.boards.net. There's a bunch of conference pick'ems. You want to get out there, pick some games, let us know what you think. All kinds of other stuff there you can look at as we go on throughout the season. People discussing just random things that happen, whatever. There's one guy talking about what the best fish fries before games are, stuff like that. So yeah, but feel free to check that out. Once again, it's badgerstatesports.boards.net. And I think that'll do it for me and Dylan, and we will see you next week. Good night.
Peace.